Good morning, Algebra 2. We're going to go ahead and start the lesson now. We're going to start Unit 1.1. We're going to look at interval notation. So this is going to be the beginning of the semester and kind of lay the groundwork for talking about domain and range and how we can write the answers out for that. All right, so interval notation and inequality notation are just two different ways of writing answers or solutions. And so we want to remember what the way to write it and then the different symbols that are used. All right, so we use brackets and parentheses. So brackets are typically used when the number that we are using next to the bracket is a solution to the problem that we're talking about. And then parentheses typically are used for numbers that are not solutions. When we talk about infinity and negative infinity, we're going to always use parentheses. So never use a bracket on those. So let's go ahead and do some of these problems. So a lot of this should be review from Algebra 1. All right, so the following are examples of interval notation. Graph the solutions on a number line. And so I put some number lines just to start out so I didn't have to spend time with some messy number lines, so you can go ahead and put those in. And then we're going to go ahead and write the solution in inequality notation. So we're going to practice given interval notation first, giving the graph, and then also giving the inequality notation. All right, so when we look at interval notation, we're working basically left to right. So the number that's on the left should always be smaller than the number on the right. So this is parentheses on the 2 and then a bracket on the 5. So this says all the solutions between 2 and 5 on a number line. Now 2 has a parentheses, and so because it's not going to be included in the solution, we're going to use an open circle. Right, so use an open circle. And so 2 is going to be on the left side, and then 5 is going to be on the right side. All right, and now 5 has a bracket, and so that's included, so we're going to put a closed circle. So this says all the solutions between 2 and 5 are going to be solutions. So we're going to go ahead and shade in between those two numbers, between 2 and 5. Now you can put as many numbers as you want on a number line, but we know that 2 is on the left and 5 is going to be on the right. Now when we do this in inequality notation, this is a compound inequality because all the solutions are falling in between two numbers. And so the way that you're going to write this is kind of like how the graph looks. So you're going to put 2, and then the inequalities, there's going to be two inequalities for this kind of a graph. They're always going to face the left. Now it's either going to have just a less than or a less than or equal to sign. So because the open circle, we're just going to use less than, not less than or equal to. So we're not going to put the equal sign underneath. And then we can just put x, so some variable. The x represents all the shading. And then we're going to do another inequality. So it's going to be less than again. Now this is going to be less than or equal to because of the closed circle or the bracket on the 5, and 5 is included. So we say all the solutions between 2 and 5, and that's what the inequality represents. All the x's between 2 and 5. All right, so number 2, the same way, change the color a little bit. So this says all the solutions between negative 10 and positive 8. So we want to put negative 10 on the left, and this is going to be a closed circle because of the bracket, and then positive 8, that's going to be on the right side. Now this is going to have a closed circle also because of the bracket, and we're going to shade in between. So everything between negative 10 and positive 8 are solutions to some problem. And then when we do the inequality, it's basically the same as the other one. So negative 10 less than. Now this is going to have the equal sign because of closed circle, and then x, and then a less than or equal to, and then 8. All right, so this has two equal signs because both negative 10 and positive 8 are closed, and both negative 10 and positive 8 have brackets. All right, so number 3, this says all the solutions between negative infinity and positive 5. So negative infinity is on the left side as far as you can go. That's where negative infinity is. And then we're going to shade all the way to positive 5. All right, and 5 is going to have a bracket or a closed circle. So everything between negative infinity to 5. So the way that we represent this is we're going to shade all this to the left of 5, including this arrow. So it keeps going forever to where negative infinity would be. So the way that we write an inequality when there's infinity involved, it says everything that's less than 5. So we're going to say x is less than or equal to 5. Anything less than or equal to 5 is a solution, or shaded on this number line. Right, and then number 4, 2 to infinity gets shaded. So we're going to do an open circle on 2. We're going to go to positive infinity this time. So everything between 2 and infinity is shaded. And so we're going to shade everything to the right of positive 2. And so we say all the solutions that are greater than 2. So x is greater than 2. So if you look at your inequality and your shading, the arrow is always pointing in the same direction. So less than, use the less than symbol. If it's greater than, you're using the greater than symbol. So it's shading to the right or shading to the left. All right, so interval notation always lists numbers from least to greatest. Least to greatest. All right, so you can see in our interval notation, small number comes first, big number comes second. And then we always want to use parentheses. Okay, parentheses, either the open parentheses on the left or the open parentheses on the right, depending on if we're talking about negative infinity or positive infinity. So negative infinity, if negative infinity is shaded, then we always want to use the first one, and if positive infinity is used in the problem, then we use the right one or the second one. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so here they give us the inequality, and we're going to give the other two forms. We're going to give the number line, or the solution, and the interval notation this time. All right, so this says x is less than 3, so everything that's less than 3 gets shaded. So we're going to do an open circle on 3, and that's because it doesn't have the equal sign under it. And then everything shaded to the left of 3. Everything shaded to the left. So our interval notation, think of going left to right. So what gets shaded first on the left side? Well, it's negative infinity. So we have to use a parentheses, negative infinity. And then as we move left to right, the biggest number would be positive 3. And then we're going to use a parentheses because it doesn't have a closed circle. All right, so number 6. This says shade everything greater than or equal to negative 2. So negative 2 is going to have a closed circle, and we're going to shade everything to the right. So working left to right, negative 2 comes first. And it's going to have a bracket because it has a closed circle. And then everything to the right, well, it's pointing to positive infinity, so we have to use positive infinity. And then we're going to use parentheses. All right, 7. This says shade everything between negative infinity and positive infinity. Negative infinity, positive infinity. All right, so negative infinity is way over here on the left side. Positive infinity is way over here on the right side. And this says shade everything in between. All right, so I'll put some arrows on there. All right, and then, so our interval notation is negative infinity to positive infinity. All right, so let's keep going. So this time, they give us the graph, and they want us to write the other two forms, inequality and interval notation. All right, so on the graph, looks like on question 8, closed circle on negative 2, and it's going to the right. So we can say x is greater than, because it's pointing to the right, or equal to negative 2. And then the interval notation, working left to right, negative 2 comes first. So we're going to say negative 2. And then to the right would be positive infinity. And then use parentheses on the positive infinity. All right, number 9. This says everything that's shaded to the left of positive 1. All right, so inequality, it's going to be x is less than or equal to 1. And then our interval notation, working left to right, negative infinity is going to come first. and then going to the right, positive 1 will come last, and then we've got to use a bracket. All right, number 10. Everything that's less than negative 1 is shaded. Right, so we can say x is less than negative 1 without the equal sign, is an open circle. And then our interval notation, working left to right, negative infinity is going to come first, and then go all the way to negative 1. Here we have to use a parentheses. 11, everything that's shaded to the right of positive 2. So we're going to say x is greater than 2. And then our interval notation, working left to right, we're going to use a parentheses on the positive 2, and then go to positive infinity, and both of them have parentheses. All right, so number 12, they give us the inequality notation, and they want us to give the interval notation. All right, so the interval is pretty easy given inequality. This says shade everything between negative 3 and 5. So negative 3 will have the bracket, and then 5, and 5 is going to have a parentheses. Now when we graph this, again, you don't have to get too crazy with all the numbers on a number line. Right, so negative 3 is on the left side, and it's going to be a closed circle. And then positive 5 is going to be an open circle. And then we're going to shade in between. All right, number 13. This says everything shaded between 2 and 9. So our inequality, we're going to go 2 is less than x. So we don't put the equal sign. And then less than or equal to, this one does have the equal sign, 9. So when you're doing inequality notation like this, where there's shading in between two numbers, or all the solutions are falling between two numbers, make sure both inequalities are facing left to the less than sign. It's just the way it is. All right, so our graph, we're going to do open circle at 2, closed circle at 9, and shading in between. 14, between 5 and infinity. 5 and infinity. All right, so on this one, I'm going to go ahead and do the graph first, just because it's a little bit easier to see. All right, so we're going to go from 5 to infinity. So this has a closed circle on 5. And then it's going to positive infinity, so to the right. Positive infinity is on the right side. So we're going to shade all of this from 5. Everything gets shaded. Shade the arrow. All right, so now when we give the inequality notation, it's pretty easy. This just says all the solutions are going to be greater than 5. So x is greater than or equal to 5. Make sure you put the equal sign. All right, so that's how you do interval notation, inequality notation, and graph on a number line, going from one form to the other form. So you have 3 different forms there, and given one of the 3, you should be able to find the other 2. All right, and I want to go ahead and do this spiral review real quick. And we're going to go ahead and do this probably on each lesson or most of the lessons. This is just to give us some review from some Algebra 1 concepts. And a lot of this stuff comes back in later on in Algebra 2 also. So it's good refresher. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is order of operations, or PEMDAS. And so we want to remember we do all parentheses or grouping symbols first. Then look at exponents. Then we have to do multiplication or division. This is really important. Whatever comes first, going left to right. All right, so if division comes first, going left to right, you have to do division before multiplication. And then after that's all done, then you do addition or subtraction. Again, if subtraction comes first, going left to right, then do the subtraction first, then addition. Or if addition comes first, do addition and then subtraction. All right, so let's go ahead and look at each of these. So we're evaluating, finding a value for each of these. So number 1, 13 plus 20 minus 9. So working left to right, we just have adding and subtracting. So addition comes first as we go left to right. So 13 plus 20, that's going to be 33. All right, and then we'll just bring down the minus 9. And then 33 minus 9, we can go ahead and subtract those. That's going to be 24. All right. Number 2. All right, so working left to right, 6 times 2 plus 35 divided by 5. So we have a multiplication that we have to do. 6 times 2, that's 12, plus 35 divided by 5. And then we have a division that has to be done before adding. So 35 divided by 5, that's going to be 7. And then 12 plus 7, 19. All right, 3. There's a multiplication, a subtraction, a division. So we have to do the multiplication first. So 8 times 12, so it'll be 24 minus, and then 8 times 12, it's going to be 96 divided by 4. All right, and then we have to do the division before subtraction, so it's 96 divided by 4. All right, and so that's going to be 24. All right, and then 24 minus 24 is 0. All right, and then let's see, let's do these last ones. So these last ones, they give us an expression and tell us a value of x. So we're going to use substitution to substitute a value in. And it's a good habit to use parentheses when we substitute a number in. And then we'll use our order of operations. All right, so x minus 12 when x is 7. All right, so we're just substituting 7 in. And 7 minus 12 is negative 5. Number 5, x is negative 1, so 25 times negative 1, and then we're going to multiply that by negative 1 minus 4. All right, so 25 times negative 1, I can multiply those together, that's negative 25. And then I have to do inside the parentheses, negative 1 minus 4, that's negative 5. And there's a little multiplication that's happening right in front of those parentheses. So just like that right there, there's a little multiplication between the x and the parentheses. So we have to be careful with that. So negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5. So now we're doing negative 25 times negative 5. And so a negative times a negative is a positive, and so that's going to be 125. And then number 6, our last one, x is negative 2. So negative 5 times, again, we want to put parentheses around that negative 2. That's our x, and it's all being squared, and then plus 1. All right, so PEMDAS, we have to do the exponents first, negative 2 squared. So that's going to be negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4, plus 1. And then multiplication has to be done first, so negative 5 times 4 is negative 20, plus 1. And then that's going to get us negative 19. Okay, so it helps to show the steps rather than just trying to do it in your head real quick. All right, and that's all we're going to do for today. So good luck.